50 years ago, in a lightning six-day war, Israel captured East Jerusalem, the West Bank and Gaza. The Israelis called it liberation. The Palestinians saw it as the start of occupation. Now Conflict Zone is in Israel and the West Bank to record a series of special interviews marking the last 50 years of conflict. This week, my guest here in Tel Aviv is the former Israeli Prime Minister and Defense Minister Ehud Barak. Why is the peace process that he and so many others worked on such a failure? Ehud Barak, welcome to Conflict Zone.
Thank you for having me.
The Israeli writer Amos Oz says that Israelis were condemned to rule over people who didn't want to be ruled by you. You condemned yourself to that, didn't you?
I don't believe we condemned. The present government and previous government for 50 years ended up ruling over another people, and that, at least in the long run, should be corrected, and we're supposed to do it not just because of the moral issue of our neighbors, but basically stemming out of our own needs, identity, security, and future.
Yeah, but you were warned, as Abba Eban said in 1967, your foreign minister at the time. He called it a barrel of dynamite. And he said, we're sitting here with two populations, one of them endowed with all the civil rights and the other denied all rights. This is a picture of two classes of citizens that's hard to defend, even in the special context of Jewish history. What he was suggesting was that it was immoral, wasn't it?
Yeah, but the
whole occupation has been immoral and unfair.
You know, Tim, the same Abba Eban said that Israel can never allow to come back to the borders of 67, which he called Auschwitz kind of borders. I don't believe in either. We shouldn't go to extremism. It's clear we are facing a problem. We have
it's a problem of your making, isn't it? You made the problem.
No. We were attacked.
If you'd given back the lands, you wouldn't have the problem of the occupation.
It didn't start with our taking over these areas. It was started by an attack on Israel, or a tie put around our necks in a way that compelled us to take action. We kind of, luckily enough, we won the 67 wars. We defeated 3 enemies and ended up with a lot of area.
So Menachem Begin said it was a war of choice. In 1982, he said it was a war of choice. Let's be honest, we attacked them. We, the Israelis, attacked them.
He made the war of choice in Lebanon in 82, but the 67 was, the issue is not the technical question of who pulled the trigger first. It is who created a situation that compelled Israel out of survival consideration to fight. We fought, we win. We'll never be apologetic about getting out or getting the news out of around our neck.
You're not apologetic, but isn't it time to admit that the lives of some 4 million people controlled by a government which they are not entitled to elect is immoral and unjust, isn't it?
I do not start my consideration from the moral issues.
Why not? You don't care about morality?
Because I care about morality, but I care more about our very survival in life. And I should tell you that I do not disagree with the bottom line of what you are trying to kind of somehow argue. The situation that has been created is such that Israel faces a choice. If we keep controlling the whole area from the Mediterranean to River Jordan, where some 13 million people are living, 8 million Israel, 5 million Palestinians, that if only one entity reigns over this whole area named Israel, it will become inevitably, that's the key word, inevitably, either non-Jewish or non-democratic. If they can vote to the Knesset, it is overnight a binational state, and within few years binational state with Arab majority and permanent civil war.
But the state that you have at the moment, is an apartheid state, isn't it?
The other alternative is that it's not yet apartheid, but it might come on this slippery slope toward apartheid. Neither is the Zionist dream, so we have to change it. We have compelling imperative to do it for our own. And I see the moral issue in it, but the Arabs initiated the situation and never gave us an opportunity. I proposed at Camp David to give Arafat, metaphorically speaking, 90+% of what he ever needed.
I want to get on to Camp David in a little moment, but I just want to stress that Israel never had any intention of giving back East Jerusalem, did you? Or the major settlement blocks.
No, that's not. Yeah, major settlement block we think should be remained under our control as part of our security.
Even though the rest of the world regards you're holding them as illegal and an obstacle to peace.
It will become legal if and when the two sides reach an agreement upon which a mutually agreed line will be delineated, within which we'll have a solid Jewish majority for generations to come, and the Palestinians have enough place for a vibrant, viable Palestinian demilitarized state.
But it's been illegal for 50 years. You want another 50 years before you make it legal?
No.
How long should the Palestinians suffer with this illegality that you've imposed on them?
Excuse me, I will repeat it as many times as you mention it. We will never feel morally apologetic about the root causes of this situation. It were all compelled upon us by the Palestinians and by the
which Menachem Begin disputes.
Arab neighbors, which, you know, we cannot ask him. He's in heaven already. I don't believe that he disputed it. But having said that, I'm still of the position that we have a compelling imperative stemming out of our own care about our future and identity to disengage from the Palestinians, and our government have to take steps. Rabin tried it, Peres tried it, even Bibi in his first term tried it. I've tried it and failed at Camp David.
Benjamin Netanyahu.
Even Benjamin Netanyahu tried a little bit. Olmert tried it later. Sharon pulled out of Gaza. And in all cases, we couldn't find the readiness or ripeness on the Palestinian side to make the tough decisions which are needed on their part vis-a-vis their people, the same way that we have to make tough decisions facing our people.
I understand that, but you don't celebrate the occupation, do you? You don't celebrate 50 years of this occupation.
We are celebrating.
You called it a crucial mistake. In 2002, you gave an interview to the New York Review of Books. You called it a crucial mistake, occupying the West Bank and Gaza, along with the Sinai and the Golan Heights. You think that Israel should have given it back straight away in '67, don't you?
I know. Don't take one sentence from a long interview of mine. Try to. Well,
it's pretty clear what you were saying. You called it a crucial mistake.
Addition by. It's called of kind of distortion. By addition, I don't like it. I'm here. You can ask me. So I tell you, we did not make a mistake by removing the tie from around our neck. We didn't. We will never become apologetic about winning and surviving. But at the same time, we, the Jewish people, want here a Jewish democratic Zionist state. We don't want neither a binational state with a civil war nor apartheid. So I am of the position, which is at least at the bottom line, not very far from what you are trying to describe, namely that we have a need to find a way to disengage from Palestinians, preferably going through the international regional conference, which is now on the table for several years. We have common interest with the Muslim Sunnite leadership facing threat of terror and
let's finish with the settlements. Is it right to keep the settlements or wrong? Do you think you have a right to these settlements?
80% of the settlers are living within what we call the settlement blocks, which altogether
is it right or wrong to have them?
So I define exactly what's right and what's wrong, and it has a content, not just one-word answers. 80% of settlers which live within the settlement blocks, which altogether cover no more than 5 or 6% of the area of the West Bank, and as well as the Jewish neighborhoods in eastern Jerusalem, they are all legitimate, should remain part of Israel, even in a peace agreement, and should partially at least swapped with other areas with the Palestinians.
Okay, when you were Prime Minister...
The only problem is the isolated settlement. some 100 of them.
The only problem for you, it's a big problem for the rest of the world because they don't recognize it.
No, the major mistake of our government is that they cannot differentiate and cannot explain to the world that we want to stick to the settlement blocks, but have to make decisions.
The world knows perfectly well what you're doing. They just don't like it. They think it's illegal and against international law.
No, the world does not make any differentiation between the settlement blocks, which are essentially needed for our security.
The world has had 50 years to think about this, and it still doesn't accept your view of these settlements.
No, part of it, you know, when I was...
It's not a matter of explanation, it's a matter of fact, isn't it?
When I was a prime minister, we enjoyed the support of the whole world for our policies because it was clear that on one hand, we are still building within the settlement blocks, but we are genuinely ready to make a deal with the Palestinians and give up the isolated settlement. The isolated settlement has nothing to do with the security of Israel.
When you were Prime Minister,
the settlement blocks extremely important.
When you were Prime Minister, Mr. Barak, you didn't establish any new settlements, but you certainly expanded the existing ones, didn't you? That violated the spirit of your existing commitments under the Oslo Peace Accord, didn't it? So on the one hand, you said to the Palestinians, let's make peace in a matter of months. On the other, you went about expanding the thing the Palestinians hated most, the settlements.
I told Arafat very clearly, it takes 18 months to build a house in Israel or in the territories. And we have an opportunity to strike a deal within less than 18 months. So why should you care? If we agree on a line that will be the border between our two states and the new buildings that are now just being built will end up being on your side, take them.
But he did care. But he did care. You said, why should you care? He did care. You didn't see it ever from his point of view, did you? You never looked at it from his point of view.
Better than any other Israeli leader until then, probably since then. I tried to see the Palestinian point of view as well and take it into account.
You took into account years of humiliating occupation, years of your checkpoints, years of Israeli guns in their faces.
I took into account everything. I was born long enough ago to see the emergence of the State of Israel. We were hardly been announced, where 5 Arab armies attacked us and tried to kill the baby before it can stand on its feet, and we survived. We will not be apologetic about it, and you should love it or hate it, but that's the reality.
It's not a question of loving it or hating it. The rest of the world thinks that your settlements and your occupation is illegal. And you know this. It's only the right wing here in Israel that thinks it's legal.
No, I think
nobody else does.
No, I think the most of the people, the world will fully understand if Israeli government was clever enough to make the differentiation between the settlement blocks, which are needed for our security. We're ready to compensate with other territories, about at least partially, and the isolated settlement. The isolated settlements is the place where we agree that they are an obstacle on the way to peace rather than part of the solution.
Looking at that Camp David summit, which was supposed to be a make or break deal, at the end of it, in the year 2000, President Clinton, you and Yasser Arafat at Camp David. It failed, didn't it? It was badly prepared. You didn't come with any great expectations. They didn't come with any great expectations. It was the wrong summit at the wrong time.
What do you mean but fail? It's clearly that he didn't achieve a breakthrough.
Well, you blamed them for the failure. You blamed them.
Of course. But the causal chain is not there. It is not that the failing to achieve an agreement caused the intifada. It's the other way around. We were heading toward a collusion, inevitable explosion. I tried my best to avoid it by being ready to give a generous proposal in order to avoid it if it's possible.
But they didn't trust you, did they? They didn't trust you.
No reason for them not to trust me. and no
Well, the
reason to them.
settlement issue, your expansion of the settlements, they didn't trust you for that.
No, we cannot and should not get any preconditions, especially not from Mr. Arafat, but we are ready to go very far if he were ready to consider our proposal.
You said you had no Palestinian partner for peace.
No, I said it afterward. I said we
But
don't
that wasn't
have
true. But that wasn't true, was it?
I said that we do not have a partner in Arafat for the present time. And it was accurate description of the situation.
But the Palestinians had engaged over and over again in peace talks. In '93, when they signed the threadbare Oslo Agreement. In '94, with the Gaza-Jericho Agreement. In '95, with the interim agreement on the West Bank and Gaza Strip. 2000 at Camp David. They even came back in 2001 to Taba. They were engaging with you the whole time.
They were engaging, and engaging is always a party of two. You know, they were engaged, but they never, under Arafat, were ready to take the decisions. I took painful decisions on behalf of ourselves, of course conditional on the possibility that Arafat will take the counter kind of party decision on the Palestinian behalf, which he never did. We headed into it. I compared it to a fire erupted in a cottage of two families. The two owners are running from both sides to put down the fire. One of them even carried the great awards of the best firefighter on earth, but you don't know if he's not a pyroman with the fuel and the matches in his pocket.
You had a big row with Clinton at the summit, didn't you? You had a big row.
Yeah, but I have
you reneged. He said you reneged on a commitment to transfer 3 Jerusalem villages to the Palestinians, and he was furious. He said it was the first time he'd been made out to be a false prophet.
Basically, Clinton was very positive in regard to our position, and his
but you had a row.
His great virtue was that he was trusted by the other side as well. But the events that you described happened several months before the actual Camp David summit in Jerusalem. We committed ourselves, but at the day that we have to pass it in the Knesset, I was standing against the whole Knesset fighting for passing this in a parliamentary vote. It ended up that the same day, under a silence kind of waiver of Arafat, the Palestinian security forces opened fire with the weapons we provided them on Israeli soldiers. I told both Clinton and Arafat, under these terms, I do not negotiate if you use the weapons that we gave you to keep security and order within the Palestinian arena against the Israeli soldier. That was not
Barak,
the
Mr.
intention.
Barak, the Israeli historian Avi Shleim says the most fundamental cause of the breakdown in July 2000 at Camp David was Israel's violation of the spirit of Oslo. And he said there's something deeply dishonest in the Israeli position. Israel's rhetoric was the rhetoric of peace, but its actions revealed its hidden agenda, which was territorial expansion at the expense of the Palestinians. And that's true, isn't it? It's not just in your time.
No, it's not true. You know, you have a
But
variety.
Yitzhak Shamir played the game, didn't he, of appearing to give concessions, but
we cannot
no
dive.
concessions on the substance.
We cannot now dive into the strategy of Yitzhak Shamir. He passed away many years ago, and
but this is what the Palestinians had to deal with before you came along.
I repeat
this
the
is
argument.
why there was no trust.
I repeat the argument against distortion by addition. You took a quotation for one historian, not the most respected one, a revisionist one, that majority, about 90% of other historians describe the same issue in a different way. So it's a matter of your choice, but I don't highly respect the history version of the historian you mentioned.
When you went to war, Mr. Barak, when you went to war with the Palestinians, and you did in 2008, 2009, Operation Cast Lead in Gaza, do you think it was a fair fight?
I don't know what is fair. No country under earth, no government in its full senses can accept the reality that 1/3 of its population should be in shelters within 15 to 45 seconds as a way of life threatened by terrorists who are shooting rockets.
But you had the largest, most sophisticated weapons in the world.
From within civilian population deliberately. You know,
You had aircraft, tanks, armored personnel carriers, drones, helicopters. They didn't have any of that.
We are limited
laser-guided bombs. You had it all.
We are limited by our own norms, and we put limits on ourselves on the use of weapons against terrorists, which are deliberately deployed themselves within a civilian population, shooting from schools and from within habitated areas.
You put limits, but by the time your operation, Cast Lead, was finished, according to international agencies, including the World Health Organization, they reported that 14% of the buildings in Gaza were partially or completely destroyed, 700 factories and businesses partially or completely destroyed, 16 hospitals, 38 primary health care centers, 280 schools, 250 wells.
Nothing of this.
This was proportionate?
Nothing of this could or should have happened if the Palestinians or the Hamas were focused on building the Gaza Strip.
Is this a proportionate response to rocket attacks that hardly did any damage?
It's inevitability. You know, I once hosted President Obama when he was still a candidate in Sderot, that's a city just behind the fence in Gaza. And we showed him the way that kindergartens are run in shelters, or the remnants of the rocket shot, and asked him if this was an American city and your daughters were in this kindergarten that was their age at the time, would you accept it? His answer was, I would take any conceivable step to put an end to it. And that's exactly what we were doing.
In Operation Cast Lead, 13 Israelis died, 4 of them from friendly fire, so only 9. And Amnesty International calculated that 1,400 Gazans were killed, including 300 children. Look at the victim, Mr. Barak. Who was the victim here?
I'm not
Who was
happy.
The victim?
I am not
you
happy.
Or them?
I'm not happy with any human life.
We didn't do much to avoid it. 300 children.
I'm not happy. I'm very sorry for it, but I cannot tell you that I would not repeat it if the life and security of our own people is at stake.
But you have a doctrine of punitive attacks, and punitive attacks which was inside the Israeli Defense Forces. Major General Gadi Eisenkot spoke in 2008 about the tremendous damage Israel had inflicted 2 years earlier in Beirut, in the Dahiyya quarter. And he said what happened in Dahiyya in 2006 will happen in every village from which shots are fired on Israel. We will use disproportionate force against it, and we will cause immense damage and destruction. And that's what you set out to do in Operation Cast Lead, to be disproportionate and cause immense damage and destruction, didn't you?
No, there was damage, but it never was aimed at the civilian population. It was aimed at the bunkers or
16 hospitals, 38 primary health care centers, 280 schools, 250 wells, 300,000 trees. Not aimed at the civilian population. Come on.
Was not aimed at the civilian population. Never aimed at the civilian population. The problem, the challenge that you might find in other places as well, but in Israel it's very kind of sharpened by the situation. The terrorists are now deliberately operating from within these places, within schools, within the medical installations, and so on. And with the most accurate, even with the most accurate weapons, you cannot avoid certain collateral damage. I propose to you to look at the collateral damage that is caused by Americans when they act in Afghanistan or Pakistan, or by the British when they acted in Baghdad or in other places, or in Basra. And you will find that that's unfortunately part of the damage of war.
Mr. Barak, what good have all these expensive weapons done you? You haven't really, in Israel, had a night of peace in 50 years.
No, we have many.
Keep on doing the same things and the same failed policies, don't you?
We had many quiet nights in Israel in the last 50 years, in the last few years. I always surprised when we talk through the cameras to public. They see that in Tel Aviv you probably cross the street by running in zigzags with your profile
Well, that's
lowered
because
in
you
order
don't
to
see the army
avoid-
raids at night on the
avoid-
Palestinians in the West Bank, do
no,
you? And the screaming children and the old people woken up at night when your army goes in. You don't see that.
I don't love, I see everything. Believe me, I see everything. I was with our advanced unit at almost any place they were, and I know exactly. I do not describe it as a paradise. It's a tough on both sides, it's tougher on the Palestinians and on our soldiers, but that's the consequences of the situation. And I am confident that we have to change it. It's responsibility of leaders on both sides to change it. But that will not bring me to be apologetic about our focus on protecting the life of our own people and their security while trying, I always compared it to a situation where you have to hold your pointing finger close to the trigger, ready to pull it, but the other hand, the left hand, usually look for any door, window, or opening into another period of agreements, conciliation, and peace.
All right, Ehud, Barak, good to have you on Conflict Zone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.